Welcome to our explainer video on how the Saskatchewan Workers' Compensation Board calculates benefits. Whether you're a worker or an employer, understanding this process is crucial. Let's dive in. If you are only off work on the day of your injury, the WCB can only pay for medical treatment. If you miss work after the day of your injury, however, the WCB will pay for medical treatment and pay benefits for lost earnings, provided you have medical support that is taking you off work. You will receive earnings loss benefit payments equal to 90% of your average net earnings up to our legislated maximum amount. Average weekly earnings minus probable deductions for CPP, CPP2, EI, and income tax equals net employment earnings times 90% equals your earnings loss benefits. Probable deductions will be based on the same information your employer uses to calculate deductions from your employment earnings for income tax purposes, and that is available as of the commencement of your loss of earnings. How does the WCB determine the average weekly earnings? This is determined by what reasonably and equitably reflects a worker's earning capacity at the time of their first earnings loss due to an injury. First earnings loss is defined as the first payable day that the worker has lost wages, the commencement of earnings loss, or simply the start of earnings loss. According to Section 71 of the Workers' Compensation Act 2013, the average weekly earnings is the greater of the worker's gross earnings from the injury employer within the 52 weeks prior to first earnings loss, or the worker's regular gross earnings, also known as the basis of hire. The WCB will use the higher of these two amounts to establish the average weekly earnings. Each claim is adjudicated on its own merits, ensuring fairness in every case. If a worker has regular earnings but has been employed for less than 52 weeks, the WCB may use a period greater than 13 weeks from the employer where the worker was injured. If the worker doesn't have regular earnings and has been employed for less than 52 weeks, their average gross earnings will be calculated based on the actual period of employment. Gross earnings include all employment income from the injury employer up to 52 weeks prior to first earnings loss. This includes overtime and vacation pay, ensuring an accurate wage-based calculation. Regular gross earnings are established by the employment contract. This can be provided in weekly, monthly, or annual amounts. For instance, weekly, 40 hours per week at $16 per hour. Monthly, $2,000 per month. Annually, $45,000 per year. To determine the weekly wage for regular gross earnings, we use basic calculations. For monthly amounts, divide by 4.3333. For set weekly hours, multiply hours by the hourly rate. We include regular overtime in the calculations and consider shift differentials for specific shifts. If a worker has a set number of hours per shift and a regular rotation, we first calculate the average number of hours per week. This helps determine the regular gross earnings accurately. For example, Sherry works part-time in housekeeping at Pioneer Village, with 7.5-hour shifts and 10 shifts in a 14-day rotation. To calculate her average weekly hours, we take 10 shifts divided by 14 days times 7 equals a 5-day work week. 7.5 hours times 5 days equals 37.5 hours per week. Another example. John is a nurse at St. Anthony's Hospital, working 12 11.78-hour shifts and one 8-hour shift in a 28-day period. To calculate his average weekly hours, 13 shifts divided by 28 days times 7 equals a 3.25-day work week. 12 times 11.78 plus 8 equals 149.36 hours. Divide that by 13 days, and we get 11.489 hours per shift. 11.489 hours times 3.25 days equals 37.34 hours per week. As directed by the Act, Rates for minimum and maximum earnings loss benefits and other allowances are adjusted annually and approved through WCB policies and procedures. For more information and amounts from previous years, please refer to the maximum wage rates and consumer price index procedures in the WCB's Policy and Procedure Manual. The first payment on a straightforward claim is generally made within 14 days if the necessary information is received promptly. The rest of your payments are usually made every 2 weeks, for as long as you're medically unable to return to any form of work. We are here to support you. Understanding how the WCB calculates benefits helps ensure that workers receive fair compensation for their injuries. For more information, visit wcbsask.com/workers or call the WCB at 1-800-667-7590.